Social engineering in offensive security today is being done wrong, and I think we need a new framework. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. If I can find my mouse again. Okay, sorry. My name is Jennifer Isacoff. I'm a security consultant at Direct Defense, and I specialize in social engineering, physical security, and OSINT. And I also love jigsaw puzzles and cats. Thanks. Today, I'm going to talk about the problems with the current industry standard best way of designing and delivering social engineering engagements, my research on the topic, a possible way to improve it, and then hopefully we can all hash it out amongst the campfire and make it even better. Quick raise of hands. How many people here have ever considered the ethics of social engineering engagements? Okay, we look at all these nerds. So social engineering engagements like voice phishing are powerful tools for exposing vulnerabilities in a company's defenses, often by exploiting human trust to gain initial network access. As ethical practitioners, our employers make money by selling social engineering engagements. And so a company hires you as the tester to evaluate their security through social engineering with the ultimate goal of making the company more secure, right? So let's say, for example, we've been hired for a vishing engagement and we target, let's say John. We'll target John. We call John using only ethical pretexts. And regardless of success, we anonymize the target's, so John's identity in the report that we deliver to the company at the end of the engagement. The irony about this report anonymization, though, is that the identities of the employees who, quote, pass the test, it's pass-fail's not the best language, but that tends to be how black and white it is, the companies will not be able to discover the person who passes most of the time. But if we are successful, which is frequently, that leaves a paper trail that as attackers, we can't fully clean up after ourselves. So we called John and we had him go to a website that looked like his company's website, but it was actually a domain that we owned, we controlled, and we set up a man-in-the-middle attack to capture his credentials, his tokens, and once he tries to log in. So we have his password, and that means at the end of the engagement, that needs to be reset. And so even if we don't include John's name or any account information in the anonymized report we provide them, we're still going to have to provide them that account name for remediation after the fact. And so even if we don't manage to tell the company, like we don't tell them which accounts we compromise, which isn't really the way it works, but even hypothetically we did do that, we have no insights into what happens to the targets after the test itself is over. Do they ever even know they were part of a test? I'm sorry, I jumped around. We don't have any insights into what happens to them after the test. Sorry guys. Okay, even if we don't tell the company which accounts we compromise, I'm backing back up. So we have compromised John's account, we're not going to tell them who it is. Then they can, even the most immature SOC can still figure that out based on like timestamps, logs, a variety of other tools. It's pretty basic to figure out. And so we can focus our recommendations on the report on not singling out John, not focusing it on as an individual failure, rather more so what technical restrictions or lack thereof allowed us to succeed. And that is great and one of the things that we should keep doing, but we still don't have any insights into what happens to John after the test. Like, does he ever even know that it was a test? Was he put on a PIP? Was he given more training? It's like we don't know. We don't have any visibility into that. And we do our best to protect John and others who are targets in these tests, but there's not currently a way to shield or assist the employees who, quote, fail. And so as practitioners, we know that no one is immune to social engineering. To quote Dr. Jessica Barker, the right fish at the wrong time can catch anyone. And so regardless of the outcome of these tests, The way engagements are designed today is to help the company that's paying us money at the expense of their employees. Show of hands, how many people have ever noticed that or thought about it? Okay, yeah, so I'm not alone. I'm happy about that. So I think that there has to be a better way of handling the balance of demonstrating risk, like gaining successful initial access, and helping the employees as much as you're helping the company who's paying you. Okay, so funny story. When I read the Wild West Hackin Fest RFP for this campfire discussion, I read it and thought it was essentially moderated debate. So I could bring the topic and then everybody would come around, we could hash it out amongst the campfire and talk about it. And after my talk was accepted, so thank you very much, by the way, and I accepted my invitation to come, they mentioned that it's like, hey, actually this is a 15-minute presentation followed by a 10-minute Q&A. And I was like, oh, okay. When I first submitted this topic, I thought it was perfect for a debate because I don't have the answer. I don't know. It's an incredibly complex topic, but maybe we could have some seasoned practitioners and some fresh eyes and work it out and brainstorm a solution together. And so that brings me to a lot of research. I'm not claiming I have all the answers here, but I did extensive research to bring to the table for everyone here today. And I'm going to summarize that in 3 general buckets. Most of the research showed recommendations that fell under these 3 unique categories. The first, and by far the most common, is only use ethical pretexts that are meant to reduce harm to the targets. While the real attackers don't have this boundary, ethical testers like myself are able to execute a test without using harmful psychological pretexts by enough to still help the company who's hiring us. So we don't necessarily have to resort to those fear-based or other harmful tactics in order to execute the test. But I bring this up mostly because I think while it's basically industry standard at this point to not use harmful or fear-based or other pretexts, I think we can all kind of agree that's generally the best practice moving forward, and it's not necessarily a recommendation from the research because of that. I bring it up mostly to highlight just because you use an ethical pretext doesn't mean you're not harming the target. Deception from a social engineering assessment provokes a cognitive and emotional reactions that's comparable to the feelings and otherwise of authentic scams, victims of authentic scams. Okay, so that's bucket 1. The second bucket is, and second most common, is to focus the report recommendations on systematic network architecture-based controls. And that's kind of what I was hinting at earlier about instead of focusing on what the individual's failure is, let's focus on what the technical solutions that we can make it so that they're not the last line of defense. I love this, and I do think that we should continue doing this, but playing devil's advocate, it goes back to the original problem. Target identities are still discoverable, and we also still have no insights or control at all into what happens after the test. So it's not really solving the problem at hand. Lastly, author contracts in a way that restricts negative consequences for the targets. Like, I love this at face value because, it seems like it would solve a large part of the problem. You just contractually require or contractually restrict any negative consequences. Unfortunately, that is not enforceable. Typically we don't even have any visibility or otherwise into what happens after the test. And even if we did, so say we knew exactly what was happening after the test, all of the targets, and they weren't following the contract. Well, it goes back to our company, your employer makes money by selling social engineering engagements, and they'd like to retain this customer's business. So if they're not following the restrictions that were put in place, is your company going to take them to court or not? Like, probably not. And so it's difficult for this specific item because it's not necessarily enforceable. Okay, so that was a little babbly, but does anyone else feel the same way about the 3 buckets, the recommendations? The quick show of hands. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks. Okay. So research, and now my proposed solution. I'm not claiming that this solution it fixes all of those problems by any means, but I do think that I have a starting point to making it better than it is today. It's not just about anonymizing reports anymore. It's about rethinking how we structure and sell social engineering engagements to help the humans that we're testing, not just the companies that are hiring us. So I think we need to do 2 things at the end of every engagement. The first part is something that my fellow researchers recommended, and that's one that I've mentioned a few times. It's the systematic technical control-based changes. We look at the reason why, like the individual failed, and focus on that element so that it doesn't happen again. Based on the assumption that the success of social engineering attacks are basically inevitable, you're looking to focus on technical remediations that will prevent any damage from happening if that does if social engineering attacks are successful, which is still unfortunate, but it should help you from that side. So based on our example with John previously, as an example, we do things like, instead of focusing on John, we'd focus on the fact that he could still access the typo squatting domain that we had purchased, and a variety of other technical-based controls like conditional access policies, in-token protection, implementing detections for things like suspicious login patterns. So you focus on those recommendations as well. And I do think a lot of the industry does focus on this, which is great. I also think we need to do a second thing, which is for the things that we can't put technical controls on. We need to recommend 80 hours of cybersecurity awareness training. Yeah, okay, I'm just kidding here, but I am arguing that we need to educate the people who we target. And as an example of the importance of this, I have a quick story. I was doing a physical penetration test, and I had already made it into the customer's office space. And I was sitting in their event area, trying to get to the part of the office where their desks and computers were. And they did pretty much everything right from a physical security standpoint. Their badges weren't clonable. There's no weakness in the door itself. And so I waited for a person, and I made a friend and asked to borrow her badge because mine was broken or wasn't working. And she went to reach into her purse to grab it, and also she did not have her badge. She left it at her desk. And so she texted her friend that was still in there asking for someone to come get us and let us back in. And after about 5 minutes, she got impatient and handed me her entire purse, and then left to go to the other side of the office where the receptionist would let her in on the other side entrance. And then she walked all the way around the building to let me in from the entrance we were previously waiting at. And I mention this story primarily because it highlights the fact that the company did all the technical controls correctly already. And so in those situations, what do you do? What do you recommend? How do you improve? It emphasizes the need to help the targets, not only for the company's sake, but also for the targets, for the people. And the way that I envision our solution now is essentially the portion of the technical recommendations, and also the second one being in the statement of work, include before the engagement starts, before anything is signed, you include the fact that, we're going to follow up with the targets after this test and ensure they're trained on the techniques that we used. And then actually after the engagement is over, take an hour and call the people who you spoke with, or in this case, because it's a vishing engagement, and make sure they understand what happened and how to protect themselves in the future. And so essentially, summarizing this, I want to make sure that if I have to exploit someone for the test for the sake of a company, that I'm leaving the person who I exploited as benefited from the test as the company is. So instead of helping the company at the expense of people, we're at least helping the people as much as we're helping the company. So Is this actually the best way to move forward, though? What do you guys think? Seriously, though, we're like, actually, what do you think? Like, please. I'm open. I would love to. I really would love to turn this into the original debate that I had intended on. If anyone's open to it, yeah.
Was there like a particular like negative impact on like an employee of a customer of yours that you saw that kind of like kicked off this?
Yeah, that's a. So the question was there, essentially, in my experience, a negative, someone's reaction, a negative reaction to a test that I experienced that kicked this presentation off? Yeah. Yes and no. I had one person that was just the absolute sweetest person ever. And I mean, you always struggle with feeling guilt or things afterwards, even though you know that it's you're not actually being bad or doing anything harmful. But it's something I've studied psychology in college, and it's something that's always been in the back of my mind. And I could never think of a better way to do it, but it takes a strength to be able to do that. And so it's like kind of yes and no. There wasn't necessarily one specific case, but it's always been something I'm like, well, I understand the point of this, it's valuable. We need this. It's essential because if you stop, the attackers aren't going to stop. And so you just have to redesign how we're doing it. But does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
So do you differentiate social engineering from phishing?
Oh, the question was, do I differentiate social engineering from phishing? They're not synonymous, but I think it's more of like square and rectangle.
I've done a lot of social engineering with banks and things like that, and it's a teller normally that gets, and they fall apart, and whatever when you tell them that they've been phished. But also, it does instill this cautiousness that they may not have had before, and somehow you got to do that. Like with the state of South Dakota, we get like phishing tests on us all the time.
Yeah.
It's part of being in IT, and the IT gets looked at more closely than just the employee does. Because if an IT guy is clicking on a phishing email, that's not a good thing. And then we have to attend a class, normally the ones that we teach ourselves, but it's an
Classic.
educational thing. So where you get this paranoia where now, we've sent out phishing tests where at the bottom of the page it says, this is a phishing test, do not click on it. And people don't read their emails anymore, and they don't read down at the bottom. But it's a good lesson to them, and it really changes. And a lot of people all of a sudden will start sending all their emails to their junk mail just to make sure that they aren't having a bad day and click on something that they didn't read, So there is a lot of positive things and a way of hardening your people. I understand where you're coming from, but there's got to be a happy medium there also.
Yeah, it's a balance between, exposing and helping risk, and also protecting people and their emotional and otherwise well-being. Because we don't want to harm them. We're not actually the bad actors, but yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there's a balance.
So first of all, I wanted to say I'm super pleased that you're bringing this topic up in a broader setting, so that we can discuss it, because I think it's absolutely vital that we start doing this in a better way. I mentor a lot of people. One of the individuals that I mentor at work, he and I were on a 4-month engagement that was focused on purely voice phishing, and it was about month 2, and the hospital environment that we were testing became like clubbing baby seals, essentially. And he came to me one day and was like, how do we keep doing this? Like, we have a quota of people that we need to contact, and I feel like I'm hurting these people.
Yeah.
Because I call, they do what I say, I document that they did the thing. And like, how do I get like relief from the guilt of this? And so I know this talk will resonate with so many people. I found that the best way that I can help the testers cope with this guilt is to frame it in a way that they understand that that person failing with them is the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, I think the idea of contacting the individual and doing the coaching on an individual level is a really great tactic. I don't know that the tester is the right person to deliver that
That's a very
message.
good point. Yeah.
So if there is a way to help reinforce that message with the client, I don't know that you can ensure that
Yeah.
that's accomplished, but I think there is some level of, you know, education and coaching
Yeah.
that needs to happen at the individual level with everyone that was targeted. And in a lot of cases, it's the client who's provided us that list of people to target. So we know
Yeah.
exactly who we're calling, emailing,
Yeah.
contacting.
So that raises a really interesting point. And so after this talk, I'll post in Discord a link to the scientific study that was about specifically how you debrief, if you debrief, how you do it, and what those outcomes are, specific to the psychology and the aftermath of the testing specific targets. But I don't think, I'm not sure how much the camera picks up, so I want to reiterate. One thing you said was, I mean, everything you said was spot on, and I agree with wholeheartedly, but especially the part about, and I just lost it. Oh my God. Give me a second.
The tester not delivering the message.
Thank you. The tester not delivering the message. So maybe if we do exercise the strategy of ensuring that the targets receive a briefing after, it's not the tester doing the briefing. And it made me think of the study, one, because I think they did that, and it's also a question of how you do it, who does it, and if it's the same person, sometimes it makes them feel even more vulnerable after the fact. So it's a very interesting read. I think you need like a Science Direct thing, so I'll just post a PDF if I can in Discord. But yeah, it's worth a read. It's very interesting.
So what do you think of like internal teams that I run our monthly phishing and security awareness, and that we're trying to figure out how do we deal with habitual offenders? And yeah, we've started going with the, all right, we're going to schedule one-on-one time with them, so that way we can really figure out, all right, how can we help you learn this? But at the same time, they know we're the ones who are testing them, so.
It's tough. I found there are some organizations that will hire outside firms because they need that unique
Yeah.
perspective. They need new, fresh voices, faces, etc. to kind of overcome that hurdle. Number two, I think that there are humans who cognitively cannot discern when they are being manipulated. No amount of training is going to help in those
Especially when
cases.
something like that.
No amount of training is going to help in those situations, especially when you have folks that have customer-facing roles. It's their job to be helpful. It's their
Yeah.
job to answer phone calls. It's their job to reply to the emails. That's when those technical recommendations become the most important element of the report. Those
Yeah.
technical recommendations are what's going to prevent the person from going to the malicious website. And in a lot of cases, you know, I do get stopped. Like, I have a target who opens an email, they believe that they're getting a free bit of swag from a brochure, they go to the website,
Yeah.
and they actually respond and go, your website's not working, I can't see the thing, and I'm like, can you send me a screenshot
Yeah.
for my report?
Yeah.
But I'm helping, like, you know, troubleshoot, and it's because their browser rules, their IT set up browser rules for newly registered domains. So it
Yeah.
can be as simple as that, you know, helping to do the technical
Yeah.
controls around that
You,
person.
you have to prepare for both options as if the other one's going to fail.
Right.
So it's like universally, they have to be equally as strong and as prepared for it. I think I am at time though, and I don't want to make us run late. Anyway, this is a passion topic of mine. I'd love to talk about it. If anyone has any ideas or anything, like, please, or questions or otherwise. This was my first talk, so thanks for coming, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it.